Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 6, the final episode of the First Time Buyer Show. We're here joined by Gary, who's just been in episode 5, and Emily, who's currently a first time buyer at the moment in time. So we're approaching this very differently. We're going to be asking Emily questions throughout the podcast, and also Emily's going to be asking us questions as well from the first time buyer's point of view. So before we start, obviously you met Gary in the previous episode. The idea of getting Emily in this was, we wanted a first time buyer in the podcast, and the producer over here suggested it, funny enough, that Emily's actually buying her first property, so we thought we'd approach it that way and see how it goes. So massive thank you very much for joining us. So before we start, when did you start thinking about buying your first property?
Oh gosh, it was I think it was maybe back in 2022.
2022.
We were looking kind of like on and off basically. Okay. And then it was really sort of like, I would say around last year, probably about September time, that we started to take it seriously. We were kind of checking Rightmove pretty much every day or every other day just to see whether anything new had come on, and just went from there really. It's
interesting that. So you were on Rightmove quite a lot looking at this first property. Yeah. What was it? Were you on it at like 9 o'clock every morning refreshing, or was it just, we're bored, let's check Rightmove? How did you go about it? Yeah,
just like of an evening, if I had a spare couple of minutes, I'd go on and have a quick scroll.
Okay, interesting. And Gary, you're very familiar with Rightmove, aren't you? So is that something almost too familiar?
Yeah. Do you know what surprised me is the amount of people that are obsessed with Rightmove and they don't want to move and they're not buying. It's become like a hobby, hasn't it? Yeah, no, I'm on it constantly. So you said that you were originally looking in 2022. Why do you think it took so long for you to get to a point where you wanted to offer on a property?
It's a long time, that, isn't it?
It's
a
few years now. It's
2025 now, aren't we?
It just was, I don't know, it was a little bit difficult for us because we didn't really know what we wanted. We were just kind of almost going, to be nosy almost, get an idea. And I think as we got more stable with our careers and stuff, we just thought, do you know what, actually let's take it a bit more seriously now, I would say.
Okay, interesting. And I mean, I was going to ask you a question then. What was kind of, the scariest part before starting to look? And I mean, it's probably going to be hard to remember now. It's going back 3 years, isn't it? But kind of, what was kind of like the scariest parts of looking for your first house? Was it like, being a first time buyer, it's, this is going to be a big responsibility for us now. We're buying our first home.
It's really daunting, the whole process itself, and knowing where to start as a first time buyer and knowing exactly what you need to have in place, so like a mortgage in principle and stuff, going and getting that sorted first. There's just so many aspects that you need to consider before you even start viewing the properties. Absolutely,
and this is, in the previous episodes, what we're trying to teach people is how important having these documents in place before you go and view your first property is. And I mean, Gary, we were talking about that in episode 5, weren't we, just then? How important is a mortgage in principle? It's massive,
at least you were doing the right way.
Yeah.
Because so many people, they get excited about buying a house and they've not spoken to a financial advisor. They haven't got a clue. No, they haven't got the deposit saved. It's all pipe dreams. So yeah, you did it the right way. So no, very good. Impressive.
So, and in terms of, finding your property, you mentioned that you were looking on Rightmove a lot. Did you find this property, which you bought now, on Rightmove, or did you find it by word of mouth? Did you approach many estate agents? How did you find it? Because, it's local in Southport, the area here where you're moving, how did you find it?
So this one, it was more a word of mouth sort of situation, where we knew an estate agent, Jackie, from Anthony James.
Jackie Holt from Anthony James, yeah.
Made us aware of the property and helped us arrange the viewing. But we have obviously previously spent a lot of time on Rightmove. I've also phoned estate agents in the past and sort of registered our interest, our budget, our area and things like that, just so then we could try and see as many properties as we could.
Interesting. And how was your experience being with estate agents? I mean, you're saying you rang a few. How was it when you picked up the phone? Did they want to listen to you at all, or were they interested or not?
Yeah, some of them were quite, it's hard, isn't it? Some of them are a little bit mixed. I think some of them take you more seriously than others, especially when you're a younger first-time buyer. I think there is a bit of, I don't know, not a stereotype in the situation, but...
not someone who's as serious.
Yeah, I don't know. They just, some of them seem more interested than others, basically, I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what you touched on before, isn't it, Gary? Pick up the phone and call the agents and let them know.
Well, it says it all. That the property that you've ended up having an offer accepted on is because you've got that relationship. You're not just an email that's sent in as a link from Rightmove where there's no face contact with it.
Yeah, and it's so much nicer as a first-time buyer to have those relationships with your estate agent. It makes the process seem a little bit more enjoyable and not as scary when there's someone on the other line of the phone that can talk to you about any questions that you've got and things like that.
It's the same idea that estate agents were people, solicitors were people. You build that trust and relationship. So you go and view properties. If you don't like it, tell me why. I want to know exactly. So then when I do see a property, I go, oh, hold on, Emily might like that one, and then you link in.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that first-hand relationship with the estate agent, you're not going to know. And if you're just waiting for them to go and Rightmove, you'll miss out on the great ones.
Definitely.
Absolutely. I mean, 100%. And talking about, obviously you went with Jackie Owen, familiar with. Jackie's a great estate agent, would recommend her. What would you say kind of a good experience you've had dealing with an agent? Is it that they're keeping you updated, or were they giving you any advice at the start of the process, even when viewing the properties? How did it all go? What was your experience like?
Yeah, she was really amazing. She was very personal, kind of gave us advice when we were viewing the property, even on ways that we could renovate it, which is, it's nice to get other people's opinions, giving us an idea of, what the sellers would be willing to take for the asking price, and the way that we can sort of like get a little bit of a wiggle room on it.
Absolutely. So you've spoken about your experience with an estate agent there, and I mean, you've obviously made the offer on your property. Did it get accepted straight away? How did it work? Was it here's the offer, this is what I want to ask, and then the estate agent said offer accepted? How did the process go for you?
So we went and viewed the property, and we went with my boyfriend's dad. Okay. We left the property and realised that we did really love it and we wanted it, and we kind of had a conversation outside at the front of the house, and he said, if you really love it, you just need to call in right now and make an offer, which was quite a scary experience to I don't know, commit so soon afterwards, but I feel like you've just got to act quite quickly with these sort of situations. So we gave her a call, we kind of said that we would be willing to pay a certain price, but if we could get it any less, that would be brilliant. And there was another offer from another set of people that wanted to buy the property, and she put both of them forward to the sellers, and they happily accepted ours.
Amazing. Okay. And then you mentioned that as well before, didn't you, about if there's multiple viewings, or how soon should you make your offer? Is that the right?
Yeah, correct. You in our current market, you can't dawdle. You could have gone outside, had a conversation with the family, and gone, I like it, but maybe we'll go and see it at the weekend. Well, someone else would have viewed it and put an offer forward, and you miss out. It's not like the pre-COVID where you could do 2 viewings, 3 viewings. You did the right thing, because did you say it was your father you took?
My boyfriend's dad.
Yeah. So having that extra opinion, someone coming along who are going to look for the boring things, the electrics, the gas, the double glaze, and these kind of things that you might not necessarily see as a first-time buyer, because you're super excited that, my corner sofa will fit there, or there's my media wall. Well, it's true, isn't it? You're looking at a different way.
Definitely.
But you're right. If you see the property, don't pause. Just go for it straight away. Because worst case scenario, you can always withdraw your offer. You're not tied in until the exchanging completions. You've got that. You're not stuck on that property, but you don't want to miss out on it.
No, and we've had that before where we've gone to view a house and really loved it, but there were so many other people making offers, and they were silly offers, 25, 50 grand over asking, and it just shows that you need to act quickly if you do really love something, because there's always going to be someone that can potentially outbid.
Who else is interested? And I mean, something you mentioned as well, which wasn't on the podcast, but prior to you starting, is you mentioned you took, of course, your boyfriend Max's father with you along to view the property, who's got a number of properties or been in the industry for years. I mean, this is something we'd advise, isn't it? Take someone who's a builder down potentially, or someone who's bought many properties. How important is that?
Yeah, completely. As first-time buyers, you're not going to know everything. We don't know everything.
No.
You know, we're still learning every day. So if you can take some, I mean, you got lucky that you know someone who knows property, owns lots of property, and you listen and you absorb as much information as you can. If vast majority of first-time buyers are not going to be as fortunate as you and have someone like that, ask as many questions. You know, don't feel stupid asking a question that, you know, maybe the estate agent's heard 20 times. You ask away. If you don't have the opportunity to take someone with you, take your notes. Because maybe as you're walking around, you go, oh, I don't want to ask that. Maybe I'll look it up. You know, don't be afraid. Information is key in this.
We have found with some estate agents, the people that show you the properties aren't agents themselves, and that's caused us a couple of issues in the past where we've asked questions and they've not been able to answer them, and it is a little bit off-putting as a first-time buyer to go and view something which is an overwhelming thing sort of in itself, and then asking the questions and not being able to get the answers there and then. And
there's nothing worse as an estate agent if someone asks you a question, you go, I don't know. Let me ask. Let me find out, because that's essentially what we're there for. But that's the challenge that first-time buyers will have, where most of the time it's the estate agent that will show you around, but sometimes it's the owners, you know, and you may feel reluctant to ask them certain questions, or you don't want to broach, you know, certain issues with them. But there again, you take your notes, you go back in the car, you make your pros and cons, and you ask the estate agent. But just be prepared beforehand. Ask away.
Absolutely, yeah. And in terms of, I know you've been looking for a few years, but, you know, prior to looking, were you aware of kind of the legal process after you've purchased a property and after the offer's been accepted? You know, did the agents make you aware prior to putting the offer in, or were you aware of it at all? Did you do your research about potentially, you know, what solicitor or conveyancer to use?
It's a hard decision on who to pick, and I think when you live in an area like ours in Southport, you really rely on sort of recommendations, because especially as a first-time buyer, you don't really have a lot of knowledge. I had a little bit of knowledge about the industry prior to us buying this house, but on the conveyancing side, didn't really have much of a clue about how things worked, and really what goes into it on your side of things.
Absolutely. And I mean, Gary, of course, that's what you mentioned as well, about advising them on who to go with. Kind of what would you be saying to Emily right now if Emily's just had an offer accepted? Would you be saying, you know, I'd recommend this person to you, or, you know, is there anyone who a previous family member has used?
No, I mean, don't get me wrong, if you've had a family member and they've had a really good experience with their solicitor and it was recent, great, go and get a quote from them because they've had a positive experience. But at the same time, do your own research. You know, we were talking about your Trustpilot reviews, your Google reviews. Did you search your solicitor up beforehand?
Yeah, it's, for me, Google reviews and Trustpilot reviews are so important, because that's almost a way to tell whether you can trust someone. If they've got really good reviews, you kind of feel a little bit more at ease going ahead with that company, because everyone else has had a good positive experience.
So did you just go to one company to get the quote?
Yeah, pretty much. I know.
It's the same with anything. You go and get comparables. Definitely. I mean, you might have still gone with them. And like me and Peter were saying before, it's not necessarily the cheapest one, because there will be some very cheap solicitors online.
Doesn't mean they're the best.
No, exactly. So yeah, a little bit of advice for first-time buyers: at least get a couple of quotes, get the comparisons. Unless it's Peter.
Yeah.
That's something I wish that we did, was get a couple more quotes. I think that we just kind of rushed into the decision and just went, oh, we'll go with her because we've heard that she's good. But I think it's, like you say, it's always worth
getting
a couple of quotes.
100%. I mean, you know, you're on a time frame when you purchase that property. Inevitably, when the offer's been accepted, you know, your agents want to know in a fast time frame who your solicitor is. But I mean, I'd always recommend to first time buyers out there, take your time and get a few quotes like Gary touched on previously. Look at reviews online, Google, Trustpilot. I mean, I'm sure, you know, you get a lot of work from your Google and Trustpilot reviews. They're just so important, are they? It's just full transparency on who to go with.
Oh, completely, yeah. Did you get your solicitor arranged before you had an offer accepted?
No.
See, there's another one.
Yeah.
We were talking on the last episode about the information, trying to have your mortgage in principle, try and get your conveyancing correct beforehand. But I think most people, it's almost a reactive situation, isn't it? Oh, I've had an offer accepted. Now I need a solicitor.
Yeah.
Okay, now I need to book a surveyor. You know, rather than beforehand, proactive, get everything in place.
I didn't realise that we could actually do that before we had the offer accepted. I almost thought that it was something that you did later on down the line, and I think that's why we did feel a little bit rushed, because it was kind of like the estate agent was asking for the details and we were kind of a bit like, oh, there's a bit of a time crunch here, we need to get moving. I didn't realise that we could approach people beforehand and kind of get that in the pipeline.
You know, it's already quite a stressful situation for you. And as estate agents, we are desperate for your solicitor and the vendor solicitor, because then we can send our memorandum of sale out and then it starts the conveyancing process. So it doesn't give you a lot of time. You know, and if we're calling every day, have you got someone so we can send the paperwork? So yeah, definite advice for first-time buyers: have the conversations whilst you're out viewing. You know, whilst you're getting your mortgage in principle in place. You're not signing up. But it's just the initial conversation.
I think you need to do that as well, because I mean, when you've just made, if not one of the biggest purchases in your life, you know, a £250,000 and onwards property, and you're getting asked questions, and you know, people are in a rush because things need to start moving fast, you're a lot likely to make worse decisions. So that's why if you're taking a step back prior to putting your offer in place and getting everything organised, get your conveyancer organised, get your surveyor organised, and make your agents aware of who you're going with, you're less likely to make mistakes, aren't you?
Oh, correct, yeah. And you've started the relationship earlier.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then you can call your conveyancer excited. Oh, I've had an offer accepted, great. They've already got your file ready. They're prepared beforehand. But yeah, I think a lot of people fall into that trap of just going, oh, I'll use that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean, do your research.
Yeah, it's important. And I mean, you know, I even get calls from local first-time buyers now saying, you know, I've looked at your reviews on Google and Trustpilot. I'm interested in purchasing my first property. When the offer's been accepted, can I go with you? You know, absolutely, 100%. You know, more than happy for you to go with me. Do your research, of course, about other conveyancing solicitors. But like you said, if someone's approaching you prior to putting the offer in place and, you know, showing up at the agents and letting them know, you're more likely to take them serious, and you're good, and it can start that relationship with them as well, can't it?
I use it more on the vendor's side as well. So when we get the new instruction and we're getting ready to list the property, I'll always say, why don't you give Peter Moretti just a quick call? I want you to free information, and I say that all the time. I say he's not going to charge you because it's just a chat.
You keep asking me about the tea as well. They talk about the previous episode. What did you have for your tea over the weekend? So let's get a little discount.
He's annoyed the amount of people I send for that. But you're right. It's the same with your mortgage advisor. Up until your application, up until you get to certain points, it's just conversation. So ask them as many questions as you possibly can.
Absolutely.
That's what they're there for.
Exactly. Well, this is what we're here for, aren't we? Do you know what I mean? We've been in the industry for years. You need to ask these people questions which you don't know. I'm saying the first time buyer, you're purchasing your first property, and anyone out there listening, it's a lot of money. It's very overwhelming, the process. I've been through it, so I know how difficult it is. So it's so important you do ask them questions to your agents and your solicitors. You know that, don't you? In terms of, you know, getting a mortgage offer in place, did you have that in place before you looked at your first property? Did you know roughly at how much your budget was?
Yeah, so sorry, it was one of the things that we kind of wanted to do initially, because we wanted to make sure we weren't pushing ourselves in terms of our monthly budgets. So the mortgage in principle was really useful in the sense that we knew exactly how much we could borrow, but then they gave us an idea of how much, say, a certain amount that we were to borrow, it would be monthly for us to pay, so we could make sure it would fit within our budget. We could still be comfortable every month and live our lives.
Yeah, so it's just because we just said that previously, didn't we, about how important it is.
Yeah.
This is completely
it's so easy
my
to
bugbear.
fall for the trap of being told you can lend so much money and pushing it to the end of the budget.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then you've
no
got no
holidays,
money,
can't afford a
nothing
food
left.
shop, can't go for a drink on the weekend, just stay in your property. It's not worth it, is it?
No, but what's even worse on that is you'll go to your mortgage advisor and they'll say, okay, here's your budget, and you go, oh, fantastic. And then you start looking at houses just over that and going, wonder if I could get a little bit off. So not only are you pushing it, you're trying to get another 10, 20 grand on top. So no, you've done the right thing, actually. It's advice I'm constantly giving to our first time buyers. Work backwards almost from your monthly payments and go, I'm comfortable and I can still live my life on this. Now tell me what house I can buy.
Yeah.
Because obviously, I've I love all our mortgage advisors and lenders, deal with them a lot. They want to try and get you as much as they can, the biggest mortgage as they can. So yeah, taking a step back and going, all right, I'm going to have to pay this for the next 2-5 years, whatever it is. Can I commit to that? Am I comfortable? Yeah, you're very sensible. I like it.
A veteran first-time buyer right here.
Yeah.
We should have just got a random one off the street. This is veteran here. Look, so in terms of, you getting your mortgage in principle, a mortgage offer, did you go directly to a broker or did you go and do your own research for a bank?
We went to a broker. I felt that they would get us the best deal. They can obviously compare across all lenders on the market, which is really important. And I know that sometimes as well they get access to certain deals that aren't available, through the bank or along those lines. So yeah, and it's a lot easier for someone else to do it all for you. And in 5 years' time, when our mortgage runs out, our fixed rate, he'll approach us then, and we're not going to end up on the standard variable rate. So,
great advice, absolute veteran here.
You are an expert. Well done.
Pulled an expert out.
You're right in the sense that I think a lot of people will go, all right, well, I bank with this company. That's who I will go to and get my mortgage rate. And you're right, vast majority of the time, the best rates are not necessarily the big high street lenders. But if you're not going to an independent mortgage advisor, you don't know there's over 80 different lenders that you can go to. I'll tell you what, find someone else who's too good.
That's the main thing as well, of course. I mean, we can't recommend who to go to all the time, go with this bank and go get this mortgage. But I mean, we would always recommend speaking to a broker, because they've just got a list of different lenders with different affordabilities that can suit your criteria. But in terms of, the legal process as well, going through it, what were the main surprises for you that crept up?
I would probably say the costs. I mean, I was expecting it not to be cheap anyway. I understand that there's obviously a lot that goes into it, but there are a lot of hidden costs that you don't always think about. So like the searches, for example, didn't realise how much they would cost, and I don't actually really know what's involved with the searches. So a lot of the time I don't really know exactly what I'm paying for. But yeah, that was definitely something that surprised us.
Yeah, and I mean, that's another thing which we touched on before as well, is, making sure you've got a budget, because if you're just putting your full deposit in every penny you've got on the deposit, there's other fees, there's a survey, there's the searches, there's the legal fees. How important is that? It's very important, isn't it? Having a set budget for other.
As part of our sort of initial offer being accepted, we in our company we use a declaration of offer. So we're looking for your deposit, your mortgage in principle, but then you've almost got to have like a contingency plan. Can you afford the survey? Are you aware that you may be paying a couple £100 for your searches? Your removals, people don't think about that. That can mount up as well. And then are you then budgeting for works that needs to be done on the property? Are you paying for an electrical certificate? Because the owner's being, there's so much to go on. Now, if you're pushing your maximum budget all the way, then all of a sudden you're in for a shock, aren't you, towards the end? Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, in terms of the searches as well, did they surprise you how long they take? Because it's kind of almost a limbo situation when everything's quick fire. Who's your solicitor? Who's your conveyancer? The offer's been accepted. We need to get the ball rolling fast. But then there's the searches, which can take a while, can't they?
It did feel like that. It was almost everything was go, 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 and it all felt really rushed. And then it got to the point where the searches were taking place and everything went really quiet. Definitely took a lot longer than we thought it would, which is really surprising. And I think that a lot of people don't realise how long the actual conveyancing side of things can take. It seems like it can take quite a while sometimes.
It certainly can do. It's all dependent situation as well. There's potentially a chain involved. If there's a new build developer at the top, there's so much that goes into it. So it's getting an idea before you put an offer in the property. It's very important, isn't it? Going back at the start to getting everything in order, getting your house in order at the start, and even following up with your conveyancer and asking certain questions. And I mean, have you done that at all? When everything's gone quiet, have you followed up weekly with them, or have you just kind of left them to it? How have you approached the situation?
As you can probably imagine, I am the type of person that likes.
Where are we up to?
It's nice to check in.
100%. You need to know where you need to know where you're getting up to.
And for the peace of mind, almost to see where things are up to. It's nice to know what's going on behind the scenes, and it's just that reassurance that things are still happening, but there's nothing that we need to worry about.
Of course, and it's so important as well, touching about how much money you're spending at once. It's our duty to keep you updated at all times, because otherwise if you're just left in the dark, you start panicking. I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of people where, you know, the solicitor and conveyancer hasn't updated them. They're panicking, they're struggling, they're on the phone to you asking where are we up to, am I getting this house or not?
Yeah, and it's difficult because I think a lot of people don't understand the estate agent is there to help with sales progression. You know, most companies will have their own sort of dedicated progressor in the team. And all they're really doing is monitoring. They'll call the buyer, they call the vendor, the buyer solicitors, you know, and they're trying to sort of make sense of what's going on. But you can do so much yourself as a first-time buyer by just having that regular weekly, you know, conversation or call them 2 times like I do. I pester,
Yeah.
but with your attitude of just being polite.
Exactly.
It's a chat, isn't it?
Yeah. If someone
Don't be
calls me-
afraid to go,
Yeah.
okay, is this normal? You know, nothing has happened. You know, am I the first person where it's gone quiet for 2 weeks? And then they'll laugh and go, oh no, it's every time. Everyone gets to the point where you're desperate for the keys, nothing's happening and you don't understand, and it's the same with everyone. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, oh God, inquiries are done, and you start with the exciting part of the exchange and completion.
Yeah, and it's being proactive as well, making the calls before the first time buyers call us. I mean, how much would an impact would that have if you're receiving a weekly update letting you know this is where we're up to, this is a delay, this is a potential time frame? I'm sure that would help you a lot.
Oh yeah, it would be huge. And it's so nice to have that touch where it's someone's reaching out to you and speaking to you, especially when you're paying for a service as well. It's nice to have someone checking in, letting you know where things are up to as well, so then you know that there's nothing that we need to do on our side as well, because sometimes you're kind of thinking, oh, maybe that's why things are taking long, because they need something from us. But yeah, it would be really huge. It would be very nice.
You know, if they're purchasing something, let's say they're buying a house and the owners are looking to downsize, they're going to a bungalow, so there's one more property in that chain. There could be issues further down the line. Your solicitor is at the point where there's not really much to do, and you are waiting. So depending on how long the chain is, sometimes it can have almost a limbo, as Peter calls it, or a void period where nothing's happening.
Everything just goes silent. It's all up in the air.
Yeah.
It happens a lot. So Emily, asking you quick fire questions now in terms of the process you've gone throughout. Number 1, what do you wish you knew before you started the process of buying your first house?
I'd definitely say that I wish I knew more about the process and did my own research before we started. I think that we kind of got really excited and just went in at the deep end sort of thing, but I wish we did sort of more research into, you know, reaching out to people about the solicitors, the surveyor, things like that. That would have been useful for us to have a little bit more knowledge of in the beginning, so that we weren't so overwhelmed when the offer came in and everything kind of was sprung upon us at that point.
Of course, and that kind of touches on the next question as well. You know, what would you do differently?
Okay, definitely sort of a similar answer. I wish that we did more research, like I say, into solicitors in the area, the conveyancing side of things, about how much stuff you'd actually need from us. When we got sent over the list of things that was needed, I was a bit like, oh wow, that's a lot of stuff. And it did take us a really long time to get through that massive shopping list. But if we'd have known obviously before what you needed, it could have been something we could have done a bit quicker, and that hopefully would have sort of sped up our process.
Okay, and going off all that, what you've mentioned there, what advice would you give to first-time buyers then going through the process?
Definitely to view as many properties as they can, get a really good feel for certain areas and things that you like in houses, stuff like that. Reaching out to people. We found it so good to speak to even like friends and family.
Perfect, so that's absolutely great advice. It's, you know, speak to people, talk to estate agents, make calls, speak to family members who have been through the process, and that's kind of the advice you give. You know, view as many properties as you want.
Yeah.
Maybe not for a year's worth, but view as many properties as you want, and get a rough idea of what you want.
Yeah, because it's so overwhelming as a first-time buyer. and having that little bit more information and knowledge goes a long way.
Thank you very much. On to the next questions. So now we've got Emily asking Gary the estate agent questions.
So my question would be, what can first-time buyers do to be taken more seriously by agents?
Well, exactly what you said in the last one. Gather more information beforehand. If you come along and you view one of my properties and you've never spoke to a solicitor, never spoke to a mortgage advisor, you're not sure if you've got your deposit, well, all that information's a red flag for me. And don't get me wrong, you can still view and you can, want to offer, but you very quickly realise they're not committed to this. And it's a long process from being offer accepted to going through to exchange and completion. And if I've got my concerns from the very beginning about your commitment, well then that's a big red flag.
Yeah. So what can a first-time buyer do when looking at their first property?
Ask as many questions as you possibly can. Don't think anything is a stupid question. Estate agents have heard it all before. Something that may seem really simple, the electrics, the gas, the has it an extension? These kind of questions you won't ask because you don't know. But I'd say that's the biggest takeaway from this. Go on your viewings. The more viewings you do, the more comfortable and the more understanding of what I should be asking. But ask everything.
And now we're going to have the estate agent asking me questions. Fire away, Gary.
Peter.
Yes.
What's the one thing buyers could do to prepare ahead of time?
What I'd always recommend for a first-time buyer to do, or any buyer to do to avoid any delays, is just do your research. Find out about the process. So if you expose yourself slightly to, knowing that I'm buying with a mortgage, I'm going to need searches, they could take, 4 to 6 weeks potentially to come back. You're going to have, a lot less stress when you're going through the process because you know a little bit more about it. And I mean, a statistic shows that 48% of people who purchase their first home have got no clue what a conveyancer or solicitor is. So, and that's a massive stat, 1 in every 2 people who walk through the door have got no idea about the process. So that's certainly one thing I'd recommend. Do your research, expose yourself to it, and also get everything in order. Bank statements, ID, have it all ready. 6 months bank statements, passport, proof of address, driving licence, have it all ready to send across to us. Because if you get it all in order and you send it to us, it's going to make our job a lot easier, a lot less back and forth. Especially, if there's any transactions going into your account over certain amounts of money, highlight them. Let us know that, I'm spending this much on the property, this is my deposit, I've received X amount of money in on this date and it's from this individual, because we've got to query that at the end of the day, and that can cause delays. So that can just cut out all the back and forth.
So what would you say is the biggest mistake first-time buyers do?
The biggest mistake that I find with first-time buyers is not letting the broker know about a gift. That's probably the one I see a lot. So say, for example, we're in the process, we start to proceed, review the source of funds, and there's, you've got an accurate amount in the account, but then we come to request a final source of funds, and the next minute there's a £10,000 payment going in from, a family member or a relative. We need to query that. Apart from querying it as well, we also need to carry out regulations in terms of compliance for anti-money laundering regulations. We've got to look at their ID, we've got to then look at their bank statements, where the money's originated in from their bank statements as well. So it's so important that you just make your solicitor or conveyancer aware of absolutely everything before the process. Because if we're getting to the end and there's a gift going into the account, we need to look over it. It's going to take time.
And what a lot of people don't realise is conveyancing can be a slow process, even if you're on the ball. So the last thing you want is to add more complications towards the end for something you could have sorted at the very beginning.
Exactly. So it's just so important. Just get everything in order. Your 6 months bank statements, your ID, make them aware there's a gift. It makes our job a lot easier. Please do that. Thank you very much.
So how many houses did you view when you first started looking?
So I'd probably say in the last 12 months we looked at about 6 or 7 properties. We just wanted to get a really good idea of exactly what we wanted, so we tried to see as many as we could in the area that we liked the most.
Did you feel like you got slightly more information every time you viewed a property?
Definitely, because it made it clear for us what we liked and what we didn't like. Areas that we were more comfortable in than others. definitely got more information.
Interesting. Did you go over your budget at all?
Unfortunately, we did. As we spent more time looking at the houses, we kind of were creeping up slowly with the budget, but we always have kept it well within the affordability. So our monthly repayments and things are still very much comfortable.
Of course, absolutely. And throughout the whole process, did you shed a tear? Did you cry at all? How was it? How were the emotions?
I've not quite shed a tear yet, but it has been a little bit stressful. So there has been times where I've wanted to pull my hair out, but no tears as of yet, but maybe on completion day.
Of course. Tears of joy, hopefully. And what would that one piece of advice you could give to a first-time buyer be for one listening now?
I'd probably agree with you in the sense of doing your research. That's something that I wish that we did more of. I wish that we spent more time looking into things a little bit more deeply in terms of our solicitors, the surveys and things like that, because there's been a lot of stuff that's come up that we didn't actually have any knowledge on, and it would have been nice to have that beforehand. So I'd definitely say as much research as we can.
Perfect. Well, look, Emily, thank you very much for joining the podcast today as a first-time buyer. Very special guest, episode 6, wrapping up. And Gary, you're here again, episode 5, episode 6. I think you need to be my new co-host now, don't you? See you next week. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining episode 6 of the First Time Buyer Show, where I'm speaking to agents, mortgage advisors, and professionals in the industry, including first-time buyers who have just been through the process. Remember, in Series 2, I'm going to be asking the professionals questions which you leave in the comments. So fire them away. See you on the other side. Thank you very much.